Welcome back, everyone, to Common Sense Choices, and I'm Linda Toupin. Well, if this is your very first episode, or maybe you just accidentally stumbled in here or someone sent you, pull up a chair, enjoy the conversation. Thank you for coming, and be sure to comment because I want to welcome you to our podcast. If you're part of the group that this is episode number 35. Can you believe it? 35. This is episode number 35, and you've been with me since the beginning, either partially or for the whole thing. Thank you. It is because of people like you that our podcast has been so successful. Well, today starts a brand new series, you guys, and I'm so excited. I can hardly wait for you to meet our very first guest speaker in this series. And so before we do, however, for those of you who are new, our podcast, Common Sense Choices, is based on the mantra that's on that 7-foot piece of art over there in my living room. It built my entire sales organization and really framed a lot of my thought processes for most of my life, if you know my story. It's all about personal responsibility, and that if you want a different life, you have to make different choices. So let's say it together. You're very familiar with it. It says, I am where I am by the choices I've made or I've allowed others to make for me. I am where I am by the choices I've made or allowed others to make for me. And so if I want a different life, whether that's physical, emotional, relationship, spiritual, it doesn't matter. Look at the mirror. It starts with you and the choices that you're making. And speaking of choices, they say that we make 35,000 choices every single day. No wonder you're tired when you go to bed. But you guys, those choices, some seem kind of small and insignificant, but they accumulate. And that's what forms our habits. And you know, what's wonderful and beautiful about our life is that Monday, a big package arrived at your door. It was a gift of 168 hours. And so you guys, we want to make sure that we treat that as a beautiful, beautiful gift. Because you know what? What you do with that gift of 168 hours really determines what you get out of this thing called life. And we all got the same gift. And so thank you. Thank you for choosing play. Thank you for continuing to listen. For those of you who are new to the podcast, when you comment, which we encourage you to ask questions. We ask our guest speakers to participate with you when this airs, if you have questions or comments. So they're always very gracious to do that. Don't be shy about commenting. Be sure to comment. Be sure to share with your friends on Facebook. Be sure to share from YouTube. Those are the two places that you can comment and share. And guess what? Your name goes into a drawing. And every week we have a winner. And today is no exception. From episode number 34, which you met Julianne Nagel, and she talked about healing and controlling her MS by going clear to the interior of China to find cures. But she did this amazing series. If you missed it, please be sure to catch it. And she offers amazing cooking classes. But the winner from that episode, drum roll please, is Leah Payne. Leah, thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting, and thank you for sharing. You'll get a beautiful gift from my website, lindatoupin.com. Well, before we meet our guest speakers, let me tell you a little bit about lindatoupin.com. If you haven't already, head on over there and sign up. Now, there's a lot of ways to watch this podcast. I've already mentioned YouTube, Apple, Spotify. We have a Facebook page, Common Sense Choices. I'm about to send out carrier pigeons, but the very best way is for me to think about you every week and email you the episode. Don't you just love concierge services where like people think about you and you don't have to think about them and it just kind of comes to you? Well, that is the way that website works. So head on over to lindatoupin.com. On your laptop, it's in the upper right-hand corner. On your phone, it's in the upper left-hand corner. Just sign up and send me your email and we'll put you on the email list. We've got several thousand people on the email list right now. Now, a few of you have said to me, now, Linda, I signed up, but I'm not getting the episodes. Well, we live in this age of high technology and everything requires 2 steps. So my guess is Linda Toupin is in your junk or spam. If you're a Gmail user, I'm in your promotions tab and I'm just waiting on you. I'm just over there waiting on you to find me and click the button so that I will send you the episodes. So check it out. If you did sign up, you still can't find me, go searching for me with your search engine over in your inbox. I promise you I'm there. That's the very best way. Well, before we meet our guest speaker, today I'm going to shamelessly promote myself. I usually have two sponsors, which I still have two sponsors, but today it's about me. I've been telling you since December that I was moving my store home. Now, I am so grateful and thankful when I started all this that someone helped me do a little online store, because I didn't know anything about what I was doing, and they were so gracious and they helped me so much. But over time, I realized I could probably do this myself, and I wanted to do it myself. And so I brought the store home, and I had to have my website redesigned. And I told you it was like the interstate over there for a while. It was kind of a mess. But prayfully, with both my fingers crossed, when you watch this episode, you'll find a link over there that says stuff I didn't know I needed. I love boutiques, where you walk in a boutique and you walk out with a big bag of stuff you didn't know you needed. Well, over there, you're going to find my store. Now, many of you are familiar with it and used it last year, but here's the difference. First of all, it's going to be shipped from my home. I'm going to touch every item. I'm going to personally make sure it is the quality that you expect. It's going to be packaged the way I want it to be packaged. I'm a little bit of a control freak. And so be sure to check it out. And I've got another big surprise for you. Because I'm doing this myself, I am now able to offer you, are you ready? Another drum roll, please. Free shipping for orders over $40. I know you heard me correctly, and you all know what shipping is. Like going to UPS, you almost have to mortgage your house. But free shipping on orders over $40. And if it's under $40, it's a flat $5 fee. So you know exactly what an item is going to cost you to receive it. Now, I may come back in here in a few months and go, whoa, that was a bad idea. But right now it's a good idea. So you need to take advantage of it. So what's over there? It's my mantra. So go ahead, look in your kitchen cabinet right now. Do you have a coffee mug that has my mantra? You need to be reminded every day, I am where I am by the choices I've made. It has a little podcast logo on it. Check your feet. We have little cute no-show socks. So when you kick up your feet at the end of the day, my mantra is on the bottom of it, letting people know you are where you are by the choices. But when you look down, it reminds you and edifies you that you make wise choices. Look on your refrigerator door. There is a little cute kitchen magnets. You guys are so cute. So that every time you think you're hungry, you go over there, and before you open the refrigerator door, it reminds you, I am where I am by the choices I've made. But our most popular selling item over there is our 8x8 canvas print. Classroom, therapist office, your bedroom, wherever you find people, you need the mantra. Now, this is real cute. It fits on one of those little stands you get down at Target, or it can like hook up on the wall, whichever one you want. And I've got two more items I'm getting ready to add. They may not be ready by the time this episode premieres, but I will be adding more items. But again, the big difference is Linda Toupin's touching it and free shipping. Okay, do you see those big words on the screen? Free shipping on orders over 40. So before Linda Toupin changes her mind and thinks, what was you thinking when you thought that was a good idea? You might want to take advantage of it. All righty. Well, let's get this party started. We have a brand new series. Remember last week when Julianne was on, and I told you she is my friend that seems to, when catastrophes happen, really bad things, when that smoke clears, somehow Julianne's still standing. And I thought that's what I'm going to call a whole series, because you all know people. Everybody watching this knows somebody that when something bad happens, like really horrific happens, somehow when the story's over and the smoke clears, they're still standing. And not only are they standing, they've taken this bad thing and it transformed them. And then they became a bright, shiny light to edify, lift, and encourage others. Instead of making them bitter, it made them better. And I want to bring you people who have done that. And the perfect person came into my life about 2 months ago that is starting this series. Now, most of you know I did a podcast on Stronger Life, which is my a gym that's for people over 55. It's a great program. They're looking to franchise it around the nation. Some of you already have signed up for personal coaching with them. It's incredible. And Greg is in that gym. And one day he came up to me and he said, do you have like on Facebook, a podcast? And he mentioned my mantra. And I said, I do. How do you know about me? And he said, well, I saw it on Facebook. I saw the mantra and I was intrigued. Well, we went to breakfast one morning. He interviewed me and invited me to be part of his radio show that he hosts every single day called Hope is Here. And I was so honored and so excited about doing it. And of course, we did that about a month ago. And I said, now, Greg, you're going to pay me back because he has an incredible story, you guys. And in fact, all of you know how much I love John C. Maxwell. If you've been with me 12 seconds, you know I love John C. Maxwell. I built my career around the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. Well, John C. Maxwell has another book called Failing Forward. And Greg Horn, who you're about to meet, is featured in this book. So I want you to hear his story and the elaboration of his story and how it brought around a radio program, a podcast, his ministry. I mean, it's an incredible story and you're going to hear it firsthand. But let me introduce you with his official accolades. He comes from a very diverse background. See, now I love that. Don't y'all just love that when it's like, wow, this person has kind of been around and they've seen the world and they know a lot about the world. He was a college basketball coach and he was an entrepreneur and he's a minister and a college professor and the executive director of a nonprofit. Hope is Here began with a holy discomfort that was growing in the heart of Greg Horn. Having suffered his own suicidal thoughts after a series of tragic events and then losing 3 friends to suicide, Greg felt strongly that he was being called to make a difference. Did you just get cold chills? I just got cold chills. Hope is Here was birthed from a desire to shed light on the taboo subject of suicide and to offer hope and encouragement to people who are struggling in very dark times. In December of 2017, the nonprofit organization Hope is Here was formed, starting with a daily radio program on WJMM 99.1 FM here in Lexington, Kentucky, that reaches 13 counties in central Kentucky. It is a 14-minute daily message of hope. Just think about being injected with hope. Additionally, numerous speaking opportunities and mentoring were also initiated when COVID hit and mental health became a very important topic that needed to be addressed. And can we all say amen? The podcast of the daily radio program reaches people literally all over the world now and has had over 80,000 podcasts downloaded. That is amazing. The power of one idea of one person. In addition to the daily radio program, podcast, and speaking engagement, Hope is Here is available on several forms of social media, including TikTok, where he comes in and does a 1-minute daily cup of hope. So I'm just going to tell you because most of you are women watching this and you can do 12 things at the same time. So unless you're driving, you can already go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and go ahead and follow Greg because it is like a little bright, shiny light that comes into your feed of the morning when you meet him. And he has that little 1 minute and it's called Cup of Hope. So while you're having your coffee or your tea in the morning, you have a cup of hope. So would you all please welcome to the screen my new friend and our very first guest speaker here in our series, Greg Horn. Yay, Greg. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you and I had a lot of fun when we did Hope is Here together. And I tell you what, I think I'm going to take advantage of some of that free shipping. You got some great items.
Well, I may have just committed suicide, financial suicide, of course.
Absolutely. I understand, but hey, we need to take advantage of that.
Well, thank you so very much, Greg. Greg's right here in Lexington, Kentucky with me. We actually worked out together this morning at the gym. I didn't know he was going to be there. But, Greg, I'd never done a radio program until I did it with you. And I thought, well, this is kind of fun.
You survived. It wasn't too painful at all, was it?
No. And so you've been doing the radio show now since 2017. So that's what, 6 years?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Just like you read in the bio over there, just God kind of planted the seed, and I don't have as much faith as I need to at times. And I was actually getting a donation for another nonprofit that I was a board member for, and I was leaving, and a guy said to me, he said, you know, I feel like I'm supposed to help a new idea, a new ministry nonprofit. Do you know of any? And I shared about the vision I had for Hope is Here, and about suicide, and just start talking about mental health. And it's actually the #2 leading cause of death for ages 10 to 34 in the country. #2 for ages 10 to 34, Kentucky and the United States. And when I lost those 3 friends in about a 16-month period to suicide, and I'd had suicidal my thoughts, my own, as I'll share in a few minutes, I thought somebody's got to start talking about this, because unfortunately, when somebody dies by suicide, the ripple effect is just awful. A minimum of 33 people are affected by that. And so I just thought, you know, it's not a topic we like to talk about, but it's something that we need to shine the light on so we can reduce this just horrific high rate of suicide.
Well, and it seems like we're seeing it in the headlines more and more, especially among children, which just even makes it multiplies worse. Well, and I love what you said. You know, it was just an inspirational God thought. You know, last week, my audience heard Julianne talk about, she was just in the woods one day after surviving everything she'd survived. And she just knew from God that she was supposed to start a food truck and start this educational process. And, you know, as you're getting cold chills from the audience today, just listening to Greg, I want you to understand, oftentimes, you know, God is speaking through other people to you, and just be open to receive whatever idea you have that you could possibly run with. So Greg, I guess the question, because everybody loves the word hope. I mean, hope is one of the most positive, encouraging words that there are. And, you know, without hope, you know, people perish. I mean, we drowned in our own depression and sorrow, and without hope, we have nothing. So how do we have hope? Can you begin to walk us through, for the average viewer out here? I want to have more hope, and I want to give hope to other people. So can you begin to walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think there's a lot of things that are overrated in life. Somebody will tell you about a good movie and you're like, oh yeah, yeah. And you go to the theater and spend all that money, and then you watch it and you're like, that wasn't that good. Or somebody tells you about a new restaurant and you're like, wow, can't wait to go. You get reservations, you go, and you're kind of disappointed. So you're like, yeah, that was overrated. Or sports teams. You know, I love sports. I know a lot of your listeners do, and viewers, and yet, like this year's unfortunate Kentucky basketball team, maybe a little overrated. So I say that with a nephew that's actually on the team, so I can say that in kindness. But the fact of the matter, I've learned, Linda, that a lot of things are overrated in life, but hope is not one of them. And you know, Proverbs chapter 13, verse 12 says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. Hal Lindsey, I heard this great quote many, many years ago before I started Hope is Here, but he said, a person can live about 40 days without food, about 3 days without water, about 8 minutes without air, but for only 1 second without hope. And then Hebrews chapter 6, verse 19 says, hope anchors the soul. And I've just found that in my life, as you and I talked when I had you on my radio program, Hope is Here, you know, our choices really do affect what helps us to have hope. And as you said, you know, how whether it's unwise choices we make or we've allowed others to make, those are definitely hope stealers, or it can be hope dealers.
Well, exactly. And, you know, so much of it is external forces, whether it's who you're following on social media, what shows you're watching, how much news you're watching, who you allow in your head, or even from your past in your head. But I find that quote amazing when I want you to repeat it. A person can live 40 days
without food, about 3 days without water, about 8 minutes without air, but only for 1 second without hope.
Oh, wow. That is so powerful. So what are some forces that causes us to lose hope?
Yeah, the thing I have found, and since I've started this nonprofit and ministry, the 4 things that I have found to be kind of the most common factors that cause us to have hope and be hope stealers are, number 1, bad decisions or choices that we make, which you obviously understand. Secondly, selfish decisions that others make. And a lot of times I've kind of found that sometimes it's a combination of both, actually. The third thing is just, life happens. Life happens. We live in a fallen world, and you can do all the right things. And, I had, as I'll share more detail, I had a great business, a $10 million a year business. I had every type of insurance except for one type of insurance because a flood happened. It was the only one in 89 years. It hadn't been one in 89 years in the area I lived and had my business. And then the fourth thing that I think that causes us to lose hope is fatigue. And especially for people like you and I that are type A's, let's get it done. We've got a long to-do list. We want to make things happen. We want to be a blessing to others. Yet when we get mentally, physically, emotionally tired and get into fatigue, it's amazing how we can start to go from being hopeful to hopeless.
Well, and that is why, therapists will say, never end a night with your spouse in disagreement. Okay. Because that's come at the end of the day, most likely because you're both stressed out and you're tired. And I've said to so many women who own businesses that I've coached, take a deep cleansing breath, forget about it for 24 hours, eat some chocolate, come back to it later. Never make a big life decision off of it when you've come off of a disappointment or when you're tired. You will make the wrong decision every single time. Oh my goodness, that is so true. So Greg, both of us are strong Christians. And so let's talk about where people find hope.
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people, and I've been there before, and I had my $10 million business, 100 employees at the age of 32, that I thought that, man, that would bring me happiness. And yet I still was empty inside. And I really do believe there's a God-sized shaped hole in all of us that only he can fill. You can have your financial box, you can have your family box, you can have your social, your fun box, but there's also a box inside our heart, a spiritual box. And I think until we get that one right, we realize that, we can't put our hope in people or things because all those are temporary. And so I found for me personally that having my faith, and my faith is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, is the one that keeps me hopeful.
Well, I know that you are such a man of scripture. That's what I enjoyed so much, because I'm not. I know the general concepts of the Bible, but it seems like every time that you bring up a subject, scripture. Has this been a lifelong passion for you, that you have always studied scripture, or did this really come as a result of the flood? Do you want to go in more detail about the flood before we move on?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, the first part of your question, I think it's like a lot of things in life. If you just put yourself in a place to hear God, he will speak to you. I quote verses. When I was in college at UK, man, I was far from God. I was in a fraternity. I lived in the Wildcat Lodge, the men's basketball dorm at UK, and I was an assistant manager at a grocery store. So I had the keys to the grocery store. We closed at midnight. The bars back then closed. So the party still didn't stop because I had access to that. And yet I still, even though the other 167 hours were about Greg Horn and having fun, the 1 hour a week, I still went because I had a mom that sowed seeds into my life of faith. I went to church and I quote Bible verses that I heard back 30 years ago in college. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Romans 8:28. All things work together for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Doesn't say some things, doesn't say most things. It says all things. And that I learned that in college when I was far from God. So, to answer your question, it's just been a lifelong thing, slowly but surely. Fast forward to the flood, I had the $10 million company, had 100 employees. I was going to be a millionaire in my mid-30s. And still, though, was kind of one of those 1 hour on Sunday morning type guys. The other 167 were about me. Yeah, I put some good money in the plate each Sunday, but still, it was pretty much about me. And then one day when I was at a John Maxwell conference, out of all things, in Louisiana, it started raining in Cynthiana, Kentucky, where I have my supermarket. And we're doing almost $10 million a year in sales. And it rained 13 inches in 24 hours. And so I'm trying to get back home. I was already scheduled to be back, and I was going to work that weekend because I'd been at that conference all week. And I couldn't get in because all the flights kept getting canceled. And long story short, when I was finally able to get back, I couldn't get within 100 yards of my store because there was a flood. And there hadn't been a flood in Cynthia in 89 years. Nobody was prepared for it, but I called my insurance agent who lived about 100 miles away. And he was like, hey, I'm sorry, you've got every type of insurance except for flood insurance. There hadn't been a flood in 89 years. Nobody had it. So I went from getting ready to be a millionaire and soon to be a multimillionaire in my 30s to being $2 million in debt overnight. And so I know what it's like to be hopeless.
Oh my word. Oh my word. And I think, when I thought about this series and I knew your story, but everyone listening has their version of your story. It sounds different. It looks different, but it's a moment where you are hopeless. It's like, I have no insurance, which is, that's where you put a lot of hope in your homeowners and your life insurance and what have you. And it's not that those things aren't important, but there's a moment where I'm thinking about a moment in my own personal life where it was like, all of a sudden, like the blood drains from your body. And it's like, what? Everything I thought was safe and secure is no longer safe and secure. There's got to be something that catches you at that moment.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting. I mean, God's a God of details. And so I started putting the things that I had learned at the John Maxwell conference. I'm like, okay, I just came from this leadership conference. I'm going to see if some of this stuff works. And I started applying things like, it's not what happens to me, it's what happens inside me. It's not about getting knocked down. It's about getting back up. It's not about trying to do it by yourself, but doing it with a team. And so I just started applying those principles, but also leaned into my faith. And we were able to open in a miraculous 21 days with the help of my wonderful staff team of 100 employees, family members, friends, the wonderful community of Cynthiana. I mean, it was just a miracle. And then I wound up getting blessed to be in John Maxwell's Failing Forward book because I shared that with him when I heard him speak at a conference. And so, it's just one of those things where God's a God of details, but you've got to look to see where it is sometimes. But kind of like David and Goliath, where, little kid, all he had was a slingshot and 5 stones, but he worked with what he had. And God used it, blessed it, multiplied it. And that's kind of what I tried to do with the reopening of the store.
And, as I'm listening to you, it's again, I want to remind my viewers, go over and follow Greg. That little 1 minute he just did right then, that kind of just took your breath and inspired you. That's what you get every morning when you follow Greg. Like, it's this little positive place that it's like, okay, I can go at it again today. So for the person out there who has lost hope or they're feeling hopeless, maybe there's been a whole string of things since COVID that they can't seem to break out of. How does a person go about getting their hope back?
Absolutely. 4 things. I'm kind of a simple guy, and I thought, how do I apply hope in my life? And so I put this together just from research that I had done. And then I talked with Dr. Melinda Moore, who has a PhD in suicidology, actually is a renowned expert on the topic of suicide, but is based here in Kentucky, but she travels internationally. As like I said, she is renowned, world renowned, known about this topic. And I said, does this line up with your research? I've done some, but you are an expert. And she said, yeah, absolutely. She goes, you might want to patent that, and kind of winked at me. And I'm going to be fortunate to be speaking at a conference she's hosting in Kentucky. It's a national conference where she's bringing in people to talk about this. And mine's obviously going to be hope. But the 4 things that I have found, Linda, that help people to get your hope back or to maintain hope when you're hopeless. We're going to spell out the word hope. I like that acronym. And anybody can remember the letter H. And hold on. Hold on. And I know you're like, oh, Captain Obvious, Greg, Captain Obvious, hello. But you know what? Really, it's that simple. Hold on. I'm so thankful that our calendar's divided up into 365 days and in 24-hour increments. We get a fresh start every morning. One of my favorite Bible verses is Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 and 23. It says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And I wrote that on a Post-it note, and I wrote new. They are new every morning in capital letters, because I needed a fresh start every morning to say, how are we going to, reopen this store and do this? And one of the things that with just holding on, I mean, we've all heard it's always darkest right before the dawn, and you get that fresh start. And we all know one phone call, one text, one email, something in the mail, one conversation can change everything. Now, sometimes it can be for the worse, but it also can be for the better. And so I would just encourage somebody right now, if you're like, man, Greg, I hear you, I feel you, I am hopeless. Just hold on for 24 more hours. You may say, well, I've been doing that. Well, I'm encouraging and challenging as a guy that's been there. And I've got even a second part to my story where I got hopeless too. But Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 says, do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. And that's one of the things I think that one of our greatest, the tools of the enemy is that we get discouragement.
Well,
Right?
and you said something there when you said sometimes it's just a note, sometimes it's just a call, and that ties so much in with my career in sales, and it's no surprise to my audience. I was with Mary Kay, and Mary Kay was all about empowering others and the power of a personal note, the power of a personal phone call. And I've noticed, Greg, if someone is on my heart, I do not ignore them. It might be a random, like, why am I thinking about this person? Like literally, I woke up the other morning and was thinking about this woman I had not seen in years. And she called me that day out of nowhere. I did nothing with the thought, which I should have done something with the thought, but she had the same thought that morning and we reconnected. Guys, don't ignore those. When someone is laid on your heart, stop, send them a text. To say, hey, I was thinking about you today. How are you? Catch me up, whatever. Because just knowing that there's another human being out there that knows your name and that cares about you sometimes is a lifeline. And I think the other piece of it too, is just the power of your words, because words are the most powerful weapon on earth for good or evil. And the girl who hands you your iced tea or coffee in the morning, or the guy who waits on you, just being kind or giving them a sincere compliment may be the only good thing that happened to them that day. You have a lot of power. Everybody listening to this has a lot of power of good.
Absolutely. You're right. I think sometimes we think it's about writing a big check or a big gift or something. It's not. It's just kindness, a text, just send and say, hey, I'm thinking about you today, and some emojis, the smiley face, a heart or something. I mean, it means the world to me when I get something like that. Even as a man, I appreciate just knowing somebody else was thinking about me and cares, about what's going on in my world. And so, man, well said.
All right. Well, we have the word H. So 4 steps to get your hope back. So we know hold on is the first step.
Yeah, the second one here, it may be the most important, the letter O. Open up to at least one other person. Open up to at least one other person. One of the things that we do, we try to, we're wearing masks during COVID, so people really couldn't see our face. Thankfully, we're over that. But the thing is, a lot of us are still wearing masks. And, hey, how you doing? You're like, yeah, oh, I'm doing fine. And yet on the inside, you're dying. And if you don't acknowledge that, that's coming to the surface at some point. And it'll either come out in a burst of anger on somebody that you didn't mean that to happen, but because of the hurt, the pain, the hopelessness, or you'll keep internalizing it till you get in such depression and anxiety that then you will have thoughts of suicide. And I know, because I've been there before, that when we stuff it, eventually it's coming out at some point. You can keep stuffing, but eventually your body, the way God's designed us, and that's when people start to think about suicide, when the pain gets so great. And I found just by opening up to at least one other person is a game changer. I mean, one friend can change your whole life. And obviously, we talk about some Bible verses. Psalm 32 verse 3 says, when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. And, that's just good wisdom, Bible or not, just research shows that that if you don't take care of your emotional health, it's coming out mentally and physically. And just by opening up, you will feel like you've had a 25-pound weight, a backpack taken off. A lot of us say, hey, I'd like to lose a few pounds. Well, part of it could be simply by just opening up and sharing some of your pain and heartache.
You said something, let me go back. It was really, all of this is very powerful, but it was right before, that's when you consider suicide. You were talking about when you hold it in for so long that the pain becomes so great because you haven't opened up to anybody else, you haven't shared. And so you're carrying it. Did I quote you right on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It eventually, I understand why people get suicidal. I did, but thankfully I was willing to just tell people, hey, I'm kind of hopeless here. I really am. And, that came to light, fast forward, we reopened the store. I won the Chamber of Commerce Business Person of the Year Award. And I thought, man, I'm in a John Maxwell Failing Forward book. Wow, this is awesome. And then unfortunately, a couple of years later, because being over $2 million in debt still, Walmart, supercenters, all the competition, drugstores like Walgreens selling milk below cost, I just couldn't overcome all the flood debt. And I wound up having to file bankruptcy. And so I put my home up for the flood disaster loan, the $2 million. But so I lost my business, my home. That I went home that night and my wife said, hey, I don't love you anymore. And I'm leaving you for an old high school boyfriend. So I'd lost my business, my home, and my marriage in about a 24-hour period. So I know some of our viewers are going, wow, I thought I was having a bad day until I hear this guy's story. I'm doing pretty good.
So exactly what does it look like, Greg, when in one day you lose your business, your home, and your wife in the same day? What does that look like in the next 24 hours?
It is like an out-of-body experience. It really was. I'm like, is this really happening? And it brought me to my knees. It did. I just thought, really, and that's what I did. I just cried out to God and just said, okay, you know what? I've done everything I know to do, and this obviously has not worked out real well. I thought we had this great miracle story. I'm going to fail forward, and yet I failed again. And so I think that was the thing where I got to the end of myself, and I stayed on my knees a lot, but I didn't try to figure out 1 year from now. I didn't even try to figure out 1 month from now. Sometimes not even one day. It was just 1 hour at a time. And that's one of the things about when you open up to somebody, they can help you break down what seems overwhelming. When you break it down with somebody else, then you can just do it, as the old saying goes, how to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. When I felt like I had an elephant standing on me. It was just 1 second, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time. And it truly worked.
That makes so much sense. And I know that resonated with everybody who's listening, because when we look at the big picture and you have a lot of negative, the big picture just sits on your chest and you're like, I can't figure this out. Because, I think, even though both you and I are type A personalities and we're going to fix the world and we're going to be in charge of the world, nobody, when they are faced with so many discouragements and disappointments at a time, feels like they can conquer anything. And that was interesting. I've never heard anyone explain it quite like that. I remember going through a divorce myself and being bitter. And one day, and it's like what you said, one day you have to come to the end. I don't want to be this horrible person because I'm turning into somebody I don't even like. And that's not who I am. And I remember hitting the floor and my face was in the carpet. And I remember saying, I cannot claim to be a Christian if I can't forgive, because I was carrying the anger, and the opposite of that was forgiveness in my particular case. And it was just like, once I said it, I had to logically say it and acknowledge to my logical brain, and then just give it to God. And there's so many times, Greg, in my life where I have been faced with, at that moment, nothing compared to yours, but they were big to me at the moment, and just laid down in bed and said, God, I don't even know what to pray for. So it's just yours. I'm giving it to you. This is too big. It's too hard. I can't figure it out. So I'm not going to try. So I'm giving it to you and to release. But let's go back to opening up to one person. Who was the person for you?
Wow, great question. Great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. As many programs, and I've been fortunate to be on. Yeah, I think the first person I was fortunate, my dad's no longer with us, but at the time was him. And I'm blessed with some really good siblings. We're all shapes and sizes. I'm the first one on my mom's side of the family to go to college. My grandfather couldn't read, was a wonderful man, just didn't have the opportunity, and was just a wonderful, wonderful man, a great work ethic, was a custodian, but did his job with excellence. And when he died, the line out the funeral home was amazing because so many kids he loved on. But I'm siblings. I'm really blessed with that. Two brothers and a sister. My middle brother's an oncologist. My younger brother's a college basketball coach, and my sister's a fourth grade teacher. And they really just wrapped their arms around me. So I was very fortunate. Even though I lost my marriage, we didn't have children yet, but I was just blessed with a tremendous family.
Wow. What an incredible story. What an incredible story. All right. So the 4 steps, we'll go back, hold on, open up to one person. So what's the P in hope?
Well, this is one when you're hopeless, you don't feel like doing, to be honest. You can be like, oh gosh, Greg, but the letter P is put yourself in new environments. I talked about new earlier on, about when you're holding on, and God, we get a fresh 24, a new start every morning, but putting yourself in a new environment. And, Rachel Hollis says, hope is not a strategy. I was like, I really want to be hopeful, but you don't do anything new. You don't do anything different. And with your famous mantra about, we are where we are by the choices we make or we've allowed others to make, you got to start making some new choices. And, it could be anything from just saying, you know what, I'm going to start drinking water at lunch today instead of having that Diet Coke. Instead of saying I'm gonna drink water every meal, just say I'm gonna drink water. Or, you know what, I am gonna get up on my mid-morning breaks. I'm gonna walk outside for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, starting somewhere, then eventually going to like Stronger Life, like we did, where you make the serious investment. But, or even if it's just driving a different way to work. I mean, I don't care what it is. We get in the same old routines. We can get hopeless very quickly. But I found when you do something new, it is amazing. And God, he puts thoughts in our hearts, promptings all the time about things. We're a hobby. When the flood, the bankruptcy, all that stuff happened, or before all that, when the flood happened, once we got recovered, I always thought, you know what, I'd like to do like motivational speaking or public speaking. So I drove from Cynthia to Lexington. I started going to Toastmasters. That was the one thing I did that was totally new. And look what I do now. I get paid to speak, and that's my gift, to bless and encourage and help others. So that was one of the new things. So maybe it's a new hobby or something, but do something new. As we all know, the old saying, the definition of insanity is when you keep doing things the same way, but expect different results. So put yourself in a new environment.
Oh my gosh, I wish we had an hour just to talk about that point, because, I spent 40 years helping women feel better on the outside. I knew the power of, if you felt better on the outside, it changed who you were on the inside. If you, I watched women pick up a mirror and for the first time saw themselves differently than they had been seeing. Or even sitting at the table with other women and women complimenting them on some little thing. You watched their shoulders, you watched everything happen. And then it has a domino effect. Hope is like, it's like a domino. Once you're like, oh, then you have the courage, the bravery to think, well, maybe I ought to put on something else. Right now, I looked at my own closet today and I thought, I have worn the same 5 things all winter long, same 5 things, and they're all gray and they're all black. So today we're wearing red. Okay, it's a little thing. And when you said drive a different road, take a different route, for crying out loud. Maybe, try a different drink, like you said. But you kind of really reinforce what Julianne said last week when she was talking about eating plant-based food, because she's very much plant-based food. You start one day a week with a meatless Monday or a no turkey Tuesday. You don't change everything at one time, and then it has a domino effect. It's like once a person improves one little tiny area of their life, it'll spread. It's like, oh, well, maybe I could, maybe I could take a new class, or maybe I could go to Sunday school this week instead of just church, or maybe I could stay the whole time and not leave early. It's those little things, but it's just a spark. It's like it's a spark that sets it on fire. This is so good. I love having you on my show. Okay. HOP, put yourself in new environments. What's E?
All right. So we talked about holding on, open up to at least one other person, put yourself in a new environment. And the letter E, as we spell out hope, expect to see changes. Expect to see changes. And that one's a huge one. And when you're hopeless, you don't feel like doing that, but we do get to control our thoughts. I'm sure you've shared the quote before by Chuck Swindoll: life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. One of my favorite guests on Hope is Here is a lady named April Ballantyne. Unfortunately, about 5 years ago, she was shot. She was at a nightclub here in Lexington, wasn't after hours thing, just during night. And an old boyfriend came in and shot her 5 times, close range in the back, and she was paralyzed from the waist down. And so obviously she could have been angry and bitter, and she was for a few years. And then about a year ago, she said, I'm going to get in shape during COVID. I guess 2 years ago now, actually. And so she found somebody that showed her how to work out from a wheelchair. She lost over 100 pounds. And then she got in such good shape that one of her physical therapists she would see said, you know what? I believe you're a candidate for robotic legs. And she said, I think you could walk again. And that's never happened in the state of Kentucky. And so they applied for a grant. She got these used robotic legs, and it was still a challenge, but she had to find money to be able to buy them. And she said, you know what? I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to walk at my daughter's wedding on these robotic legs in November, which was just this past November, 2022. And guess what? She did.
Wow.
So she said, I'm going to expect to see a change. I could stay where I'm at. I could be bitter and angry, and I'd have a lot of reason to. Not a choice she made, but an unwise choice somebody else made. But with those wise choices, and said, I expect to see a change. As you said, one workout, another workout, lost 1 pound, 100 pounds. Next thing you know, she's walking in these robotic legs at her daughter's wedding just a couple months ago.
And that all started with one thing. And it was born out of COVID, which is a very negative thing. And I think, and this could be a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. I would love to do a whole series of shows of the positives that happened because of COVID. Okay. People were forced to make changes that maybe they would have never made, but they had to make during COVID, and for all the tragedy. And there was lots of tragedy that happened. I'm not minimizing that in the least bit. However, I think every family, I can tell you 2 or 3 things that happened to my own family that have been a blessing, have been an incredible blessing, because people were forced into different routines. But expect to see different changes. So let's go back to your story, because your family wrapped their arms around you. They were the people that you opened up to. So what were the new environments? I mean, I know you said you went to Toastmasters, so that was like, that kind of began to open up the doors probably to your radio show. Would you say that was the day that you opened up the doors to the radio show?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, life, as you know, is all about relationships. One of the people that I met at Toastmasters 15 years earlier, when I started the radio program, they were my producer, and they designed my website. They did all my admin stuff. And so it all started at Toastmasters, and I did some counseling. I started working out. It's a series of decisions. Sometimes I like to try to come up with 5 F's and what I'm not, but faith, family, physical, which is with a P, but it sounds like with an F, physical, and with the counseling, getting some of that, doing that. And then even for a short time, I don't think this is the long-term answer, but even for a short time, I did take an antidepressant just to help get me over the hump. And I know some people of faith like, oh, you can't do that. And, I don't think it's the only answer, but sometimes for a season that can be part of it. So mine, it wasn't just one thing, it was a series of things and people. And that combination of those 5 things helped me to fail forward. And I got to meet John Maxwell a few years after all this happened, and bought one of his books and told him about what happened. And he wrote in the book, he said, "You failed forward twice. Congratulations." And that's what life's all about, I think, is just to keep failing forward. It's not a question whether you're going to fail, but do you fail backwards, or do you stay there, or do you fail forward? And I would just encourage people, as John Maxwell says in the book, failure is not a person. You're not a failure if you fail. Failure is an event. And when we get depressed and hopeless is when we internalize failure and take it personal. Failure is not personal. Failure is an event. Let's learn from it. Let's grow from it. Let's move forward. Let's help others learn from it. And, obviously, I mean, the story of Mary Kay, it's in the beginning of this John Maxwell book. I mean, if anybody had a reason to quit and just stop because life was painful and could have been hopeless, it was Mary Kay Ash, right?
Exactly. And many in my audience, of course, know her story and how she was, just born in the wrong body at the wrong time period. But because of all the negative, it forced her to think a new thought, create a brand new thought. So, well, this is awesome. And I love failure is an event. I'm sure I read that somewhere, but you're not a person. It's not a person. It's an event. Well, Greg, this has been incredible. I have a feeling this will be watched over and over. People will hit play and replay because you filled people with hope with your words. Any last bit of advice that you would give my audience? First of all, tell them all the places they can find you. I'll post it, but you tell them where they can find you, and any last words of advice.
It's best way is just to go to my website, hopeisheretoday.org. It's hopeisheretoday.org. And there's contact information. You can find the podcast of the radio programs. There's some resources there. So I really encourage you that. We're on all the platforms, social media. You can find me on Facebook at Hope Is Here. But then on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, you will find us at Hope Is Here, LEX, short for Lexington. Hope Is Here, LEX, for Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
And you also have a YouTube channel.
We do. Thank you. Yes, the YouTube channel. We started that last year, and you go Hope Is Here and then put my name in, Greg Horn. That's HORN.
And your podcasts are available on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and others. But if they go to your website, all of that will be there.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you guys truly, can you imagine every day Greg is in your feed? You want Greg in your feed. That's one of those sentences that 20 years ago you would have thought, I would never say something so stupid. Greg will be in your feed.
I appreciate it. You've been a great source of encouragement to me, and what you do, what you write, and your YouTube channel. Those things really inspire me, and that's why I think, to grow and to be hopeful, you've got to do that. Put those things in your mind, like Linda's programs and the things that she does. And the 1 minute cup of hope. A lot of people, I don't have even 14 minutes. Mine's only 14 minutes long, the podcast, but like we've all got a minute, and that's kind of how the minute cup of hope was birthed out of that. And it's just been incredible to see what's happened. It'll only be a year in May, but that's really, really just done very, very well, providing hope.
Well, and I think, like I said, it's just one of those things that comes through my feed every day, and it just lifts me up, just that 1 little minute. And sometimes that's all people need, because, like you said, it's just a new environment. It's like, oh, that's a new thought. I wasn't doing that, and I need to think that thought more, and maybe unfollow the other person who makes me think not so nice thoughts. Well, Greg, thank you so very, very much. You've been an incredible blessing to me personally. Continue our friendship and all the things that we do together. And thank you for taking a valuable hour out of your life, those 168, to share with everyone today. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
All right, you guys. Well, what'd you think? That was pretty amazing, was it not? Oh my gosh, what a blessing. And you will listen over and over again. All the links will be in the text above. And so get ready for our series. We're gonna have Julianne back, but we're also going to meet some immigrants, people who come to this country against enormous odds, to have what we take for granted and to hear their stories of what they've done so that they can escape oppression or evil governments or whatever they escape from. But guys, we need to fill our minds with people who have overcome amazing odds. You know, I think there's so much negative news in the world, but if you just listen to inspirational stories, such as Greg's, then I promise you, your life will be different. Well, you guys have been great today. So head on over to lindatoupin.com before I change my mind about giving you free shipping. All right, you guys, have a great day.